Well, I did one thing that was really good, but I did another thing that was a colossal fuck up. And that
I think
is
most of us could say that.
I did finally get, with some help of Jeff Milberg, the sponsor intro thing to be correct and formally include Meds Cafe. But when I replaced it, I accidentally replaced it with the intro. And so I wasn't prepared to do the proper intro. I'll have to get that straightened out. But we can recognize our sponsor in a way that we have yet been able to, because of all the hard work and dedication and energy I put into this.
If you do say so yourself.
And hopefully this is the right one.
Jazz Cabbage Cafe is, of course, sponsored by Stone Depot, Redemption Cannabis, Real Leaf Solutions, Detroit Nutrient Company, GrowGreenMI.com, Custom 420 Promos, gotta love that culture, Clothing.club, and Meds Cafe.
Yeah.
He did it. That's great.
And that's got to fix the other thing. Always something to work on. You know, we always pay attention to detail around here and always work meticulously to make sure it's all in line.
Stacy has a great hat on today. Thanks for joining us, Stacy.
Thanks for having me, gentlemen. And what are you wearing, Jamie? Who's on your hat?
Meds Cafe.
All right, so we're both a little bit fashionable. Hat Club, hashtag Hat Club.
Yeah. And
I'm also whoring out a brand too.
Rick and Anton noticeably are not wearing hats.
No hats today. I actually have a Wounded Warrior project, sure, so not cannabis related, but veteran related.
But very positive. We'll accept it.
Right.
Nonetheless. So I noticed that FDA got further with coming up with a structure for approving more studies of these studies, and usually developed around creating medicines or whatever, or learning about it. But that was a sticking point for a lot of the organizations that have been recipients of the grant to do further research, because the stipulation to meet the FDA standards, or to have approval from the FDA, I think more specifically, is there. And so hopefully we'll get further in that. Have you heard more about that, Anton?
Oh boy, it's a shit show with the FDA. Here's the thing with the FDA too. And when we're talking about like what's different between the grants, and a lot of these pharma companies want to do research to create and bring a drug to market and pharma the shit out of cannabis, right? That's kind of the normal reason you would deal with the FDA. When we're dealing with some of these other research institutions, they're saying, well, we're not looking to create a drug. We don't want to bring a drug to market. We're just looking to conduct research and science and see if CBD does work on chronic pain, or if high doses of THC, you know what I'm saying? It's different than bringing a drug to market. But here's the thing is they have to go through basically the same process. And the issue with FDA that I'm seeing and having read a lot of their communications and the back and forth between some of these different organizations, I can't put my finger on it. If they're intentionally trying to create barriers because they don't want to see it happen, meaning the research, or is it a liability game that they're trying to cover their asses, but they're being such sticklers with the way that they're pointing things out. For example, milligrams, right? If you have a veteran and they're smoking a joint, right? A 1 gram joint, you can't really get a finite amount of milligrams. Is it 25 milligrams? Is it 30 milligrams? Is it 50 milligrams? We can't really tell it. It's a botanical product, right? And when we give veterans a specific amount, say example, 2 grams a day, here's your 2 grams of study drug. And
why do we care about that? I mean, because it's itself based upon, a certain misunderstanding of.
That is the issue, is they're looking at it from a pharma perspective, and they're not really budging on a lot of this stuff. But here's the real stickler is they have approved some of these things in the past. You know, when we talk about like MAPS, wanting to basically give veterans 2 grams, whatever the number is, they want to give them a specific amount of cannabis. This is your cannabis. When you need the cannabis, smoke it or vaporize it, or however you want to use it. You want to use it in a water pipe? Do you want to roll it up into a joint?
And they had to modify that. It used to be use how you use it whenever you use it, and that's what they wanted, which makes the most sense. And that's what.
And there's
wanted.
precedence. There is precedence. There was a study in Colorado that the FDA did bless off on, where they allowed this self titration model that like MAPS that wants to pursue. And that makes sense, right? Because that's how people use it. When I'm nauseous, I roll a joint and I smoke the joint and I feel better, right? That is just real world use. But what FDA is saying is they want specific protocols and, you know, 5 puffs, hold it in for 10 seconds. And, you know, these kind of parameters that they're putting on its use that aren't real world. They're not realistic.
That itself is I mean,
well, it taints the science, because here's the thing is people don't realistically use cannabis in that manner. And there was a study where they tested this model out, and patients were taking their 5 puffs or however many puffs it was and holding it in. They were getting sick. They were getting lightheaded. They were vomiting because that's just, they were
it's already been
themselves.
Determined, like when you take the hit in, whatever, you know, the surface, the membranes on the surface of your lungs or whatever that take in the material, it takes it in on the hit. Holding it in doesn't bring in any more, you know, material, except for keep more probably pollutants or something in your lungs longer than they need to be.
Yes. Was it like 2 seconds? So it's absorbed your lungs within a matter of seconds.
I thought it was as absorbed. It hits it, but you know, that could be, there could be more refined now. I mean,
whatever circulates throughout the lungs and the alveoli. I mean, they're really focusing more on a dosage regulated kind of a system, as opposed to what we're looking at, which is just basic effect. So they're beyond.
I support MAPS's, and I've had many conversations with Rick Doblin. He's like the godfather of MDMA research in this country, right? And MAPS, the protocol that they're looking to put together, I do support, because it is a real world study. But MAPS has been going at it with FDA for 18 months. See, like they are way further down the path. Like U of M and Wayne State, they're still trying to figure out what it is they're going to do to even submit to FDA. They haven't even gotten into the conversation.
For a reminder, for a while they thought that they were going to be bypassing the actual mandates of the law because of how difficult it is. I mean, they had their, you know, their position on it or whatever, but
yeah, they want to and to their credit, they want to conduct research, right? And I get that. And the issue is we had to do it within the confines of what the voters authorized. And that really, I want to say, convoluted the situation, because now you got the boogeyman, the FDA, hiding in the corner that is and fitting everything in to be congruent within the confines of the way it's supposed to be has been very difficult. So I think, you know, MAPS is the furthest along, but they've hit a roadblock, and the roadblock is the self-titration model. And they are adamant that they believe that that's the way those research dollars should be spent. I tend to agree with them. And the only other option is to argue before the FDA and basically state what it is I'm stating. You know, as a veteran, I'm not going to use it the way you're proposing. That's just not fucking realistic, right? And
you say that you are actually going to or have given testimony.
Yeah, within the next, soon. Yeah, I'll be before the FDA as part of a, absolutely. And it's an informal meeting that is going to be taking place to argue this position. But after that, then now you're talking, if FDA doesn't see the light, so to speak, you're talking about spending a significant, when I say significant, I'm talking like $200 and some odd $1,000 on lawyers to fight the FDA, and they'll win, right? We know they'll win because there's precedence for this to happen. So I don't fault MAPS for wanting to fight the FDA, because they want to conduct research. They're sitting on 13 mil and they can't do anything. So now we're in this tricky position. Do we do we want $250,000 of taxpayer money to go towards lawyers? No, we don't want that, right? We should be able to argue this before the FDA, and the FDA should be able to have a conversation and understand, and they should be able to meet in the middle and figure something out. But that's kind of where it's at. I am hinky whenever I read any of this stuff about the FDA and the protocols and look, they could put anything they want on paper, but the reality is, until you cycle through all these old ass perspectives that are stuck in the FDA and get new blood in there, we're stuck. It's just like the same thing with legalization, right? Until all these elderly Congress people are just, until they pass away from natural causes or retire or whatever, attrition. This is a battle of attrition, and the FDA is no different. And this isn't based on science. It is science. They use science as kind of like the cover, but this isn't about. So there's a politics.
They accept a lot of the ad populum kind of things that we now have reason to question, and the stuff like that.
This is political bullshit that's poisoned many other facets of our society. Lobbyists, pharmas, this, that, and so I mean, I don't put too much stock into this until somebody steps up to the plate and really is at the helm there and is pushing, like, we are going to conduct this research and remove some of these barriers. At the same time, hold these institutions accountable and make sure that the research is being conducted in a safe, ethical manner. And there's so many variables. It's complicated. I would never want to do that shit.
A progressive overhaul of that include, how you might view a plant medicine research, and that somebody, will use it differently than somebody else. And we should be capturing, that.
Yeah. I mean, we're on the cusp. I mean, MDMA is going to be, they're phase 3. They've wrapped up phase 3. Like, MDMA is going to be something soon that you're going to be able to go to the doctor and go to, that's just a reality. But MDMA is also not plant medicine. I mean, we have the ayahuasca, we have psilocybin, which psilocybin is also being heavily studied right now, but there's no reason. They're all the same: cannabis, psilocybin, ayahuasca, iboga. All these plant medicines need to have a pathway to conduct research it's not a milligram, it's not a pill, an oxy or whatever. It's not a chemical structure. It's a botanical product. So they have to recreate the way they're thinking. And I don't know if it's going to happen anytime soon. It's just my opinion reading some of this shit.
And so goes, for a lot of aspects of cannabis, it's going to be a while.
Yeah, well, and let's not forget too. We're trying to. I mean, research is research, and the outcome is the outcome. Science should never be influenced. However, I believe, we know Big Pharma is terrified of positive research coming out. Right, the research that is and has been conducted, a lot of it is to put cannabis in a negative light, because that only boosts the position of the Big Pharma asshole standing in the background. A trailer full of pills that they're trying to dump into contracts, federal contracts all over the country, right? That looks bad. And so when you have research that's actually stepping up to the plate and is being proposed and is actually going to expose the plant in its truest form that we know to be positive, that is bad for business, which is bad for politics, which is bad for the assholes at the top. And that's just the way it works.
Well, the pharmaceutical industry is not prepared for a competitor that anyone can grow in their backyard, and many people commonly do. In the effort to reduce this down to a tincture, a drop kind of a method, or a pill form where you could take 3 THC tablets and call me in the morning kind of a thing. That's been going on for a long time. GW Pharma had that experimental new drug designation, yes, with CBD and certain things. So. It's not new that pharma is coming after us, but it's still an ongoing thing that we should have already shed by now.
And if they want to come up with such a pill, fine, just not in lieu of anything else. It doesn't mean
right. Right.
I mean, look at Marin, all that synthetic THC bullshit. I mean, and it may work for some people. I don't know, but the fact is that they've been trying to bastardize things and pharma the shit out of things for probably decades now, right? And we haven't made zero progress. And I shouldn't say zero progress, but the progress we should have made significantly more progress than where we're at today.
Probably because there's more focus on trying to figure out what to do to earn more money, as opposed to what's the best thing to
well,
do.
not only that,
but it's been crucial. I mean, the fact that they have done that has saved a lot of lives, and
Yep.
there's medicine available for people. The Western world does benefit from that, but
it's not all negative. It is
Yeah.
definitely all not a negative, but a lot of we have a lot of things we need to hash out. We need to hash it out soon. How many states do we have legal? Is it 38 states, or what are we up to now as far as that have legalized this? How many millions of people are consuming on a daily basis? We need to be responsible as a society and conduct responsible research, so we know what the effects are, and we know what how it's going to respond to people on certain medications and what the positive effects are. And we can't do it as long as, well, and now look at law enforcement too. You go down that road, that's bad for their business. I mean, if we added up the amount of seizures just from civil asset forfeiture, from cannabis, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine what the number would be. That's bad for business.
We'll do a show that kind of like spends some time with all that, what's happened, what's kind of going on now, and with that, and there's a lot of truth to what you say. That was a lot of motivation for some shit for a long time.
One of the things that I wanted to interject, I'd been listening to what you were talking about, Anton, is that we have nothing to disprove. Right. They don't have files that we have to say, no, you're wrong. We've already disproven when it came to cannabis, we've already said that, your rhesus monkey study just doesn't make any sense. When you read the study, we can show you where you made your errors. Your sperm count, we can show you where you made your errors on this.
Amotivational syndrome.
Right. We can show you where this doesn't make any sense. We can show. It's not like other substances where the FDA has binders full of why you don't want benzene in your water.
Right.
Okay. And again,
we talked about this earlier. They accept a lot of information on face value without having much reason necessarily to believe it's the truth.
That's right. And I ask this regularly. People talk about BHO. They don't want butane. They're afraid of butane. In the meantime, they love Cheese Whiz on their crackers. And if you look at Cheese Whiz, the propellant's butane. And then, and I'm not, this is all Adam Brooks' opinion, please, so don't get offended. And then there's the people that will only use the hemp wick because they don't want to inhale the butane off the lighter when they're lighting their joint. In the meantime, none of you can tell me how much butane is dangerous. But I can tell you because I went and looked it up. And according to the FDA, because those are the only people we have to go to get our numbers. And that's part of the whole problem here, Anton, is that we're getting our numbers and our information from people who have not only been misinformed, but ill-informed.
Mm-hmm. So what's the butane level? Don't leave us in suspense, man. Come on.
Well, I was just going to say, it's my understanding that it's 8,000 ppm continuously for 8 hours becomes dangerous. So the worst dab you've ever taken, poop scoop you've ever taken in your life was not dangerous. It might have tasted like shit, and it might have done all kinds of pain, but we're talking about danger, and they're not telling us where the dangers are.
Well, hydrocarbons have polluted our. I mean, talk about butane, but talk about microplastics that are in the water and all this other
big conversation about gas ranges right now for that same reason.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Funny, which is funny because my wife's family was in the electric business, and her grandfather made a deal one day with a guy to take out all his gas ranges and put in electric ranges. And this guy got a house for that deal. And that's about to happen all over America when they prove how bad gas ranges are for people.
And I mean, it's really going to be proven, or this is something that's being suggested as a way for electric-based models to try to take over the market.
They're showing that the gas coming out of the gas, that having a gas burning stove is not a healthy thing.
Okay.
first of all, you have continuously burning gas because most of them had pilots.
Pilot light, right?
Right, which the new ones don't. The new ones are all electric pilot. So, but again, we can only turn to the FDA because they're supposed to be there to protect us, and they're supposed to have been there to have the answers. So it's important that we get them to do the studies, or at least accept the studies done by somebody else. And that, I think, is what's going to happen when it comes to the whole cannabis thing, is that there are plenty of universities spending plenty of money doing all kinds of things that the government's going to have to accept, because, as I've said before, and you pointed it out, we need one more generation of die-off. And I think we're rid of those old people that are keeping us where we're at. And I like the way you said it, Anton. You used the word natural. Yeah,
and there'll be less people damned to hell too.
You noticed I didn't use the word natural.
Yeah, it's attrition. At the end of the day, it's attrition, be it retirements, be it whatever.
But that's
disease, accident.
When we've seen Professor Rosania from the University of Michigan, look for research opportunities in other nations simply because he was denied an opportunity to work with actual cannabis plants here in America.
Right.
That's terrible when we're having a brain drain outward because we're of our backwards policies.
At a place that could have claimed to be the #1 place for marijuana in the country. The University of Michigan missed the opportunity to say that it started here. They forced it on us. Here we are studying all we can. Look at this huge event that happens here.
Let's not forget we gave them $8 million too, by the way, to study.
Listen, we've given them a lot more.
They have a lot of resources, and they should find it worthy on their own. And it's been a weird thing that they've been so resistant, and Gus has really helped to highlight that. Stacy's been hanging with us for first 22 minutes, I guess, and is here to get involved in a discussion on what's going on with labor and stuff. I know you're into like the whole discussion though, Stacy. So it's not like you're.
No, I'm enjoying what's going on right now. And I want to ask Anton, you said we as in who gave U of M $8 million?
The state.
The taxpayers of Michigan.
Revenue generated by the tax money for cannabis.
Yeah.
Veteran Research Fund.
Yeah.
And here we are. And it doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. Like you said, they missed a big opportunity here. A big opportunity.
If they still think it's evil and going to hurt their federal funding and the whole list of stuff, then I guess they stay away from it.
Well, they were. It's my understanding they were told specifically to put an end to hash bash. Keith Stroop talks about meeting one of the deans on an airplane.
It's the founder of NORML, an attorney. Yeah.
The guy said, "Whoa, where are you going?" He says, I'm sorry, it wasn't Stroop. It was the guy from Texas, the bald guy that ran NORML for a minute.
Paul Stanford?
No, different proclivities.
Nadelman?
Dick Cowan, a bald 60, 70-year-old dude on the airplane meets the dean. The guy says, "Where are you going?" He says, "I'm going to U of M to give a speech." The guy says, "Oh, really? I'm the dean of whatever. I run the certain school." He says, "Yeah, well, he said, "No, we were told directly by the White House to get rid of that event. That's why they're up against what they're up against. And that's why they're fighting what they're fighting." Why? Because we were getting some traction and the federal government didn't like it. And now they've had to take a different, view. But they came directly at us because that's all there was at one time was the hash bash. And this massive gathering of people to say, "Fuck you to the man. We don't give a shit what law you pass. We're going to smoke weed and we're going to walk around town and do it. And there's nothing you can do about it because the town doesn't care."
Yep.
So,
who was the person at the time that incident happened? Do you know?
That was a Bush, I believe.
That wouldn't surprise me.
I believe that was Dummy Bush, not Daddy Bush.
So, Bush the Lesser.
Yeah, I
In
can.
Game of Thrones terms, Bush the Lesser.
The lesser Bush.
Yeah. Bush.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, he didn't lead the CIA, so my hatreds are a little different. But
Sure.
No.
Anyway,
But
so
it doesn't surprise me coming from that administration, coming off of 8 years of Reagan and then 4 years of Dad Bush, that
Right.
they would still be pushing things like Cash Bash to be silenced, Boston Freedom Rally, and
Bush.
Seattle Hemp Fest, and in Wisconsin they have a big thing there too, helping festivals as well. So I'm
Right.
sure all of them have had pressures just like that.
Yeah.
Interesting little tidbit of history. I would always learn something when you're on the show, Adam.
I try.
Sell drugs and fund a war, and then try to smash the hash bash because it's really bad.
Well, isn't that what we did in like other countries? But we actually delivered weapons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't make a lot of sense most of the time. So I guess
I'm waiting for my delivery. They got my address. They know where to find me.
Nicaraguan death squads and
just-
El Salvador and Noriega and all those things.
Just give me my Second Amendment rights back, and I'll be happy.
So, Stacy, we started talking about labor a little bit, perhaps.
Yeah, there's been issues continue, and there's been some developments and stuff. And I know that you wanted to come on and talk about some of that stuff, but definitely we are interested, and it's time to get a update.
Well, appreciate it, guys. I know I was on the last episode of 2022. So, let's kind of pick up where we left off there, which is a big update when it comes to Lorna McMurray, the death of Lorna McMurray over in Mount Holyoke, Massachusetts. The OSHA and TrueLeave, which is the company that owned the facility where Lorna passed away, have reached a settlement. And that settlement, I'll read it to you. So they were originally charged for cited with 3 violations. And in this settlement, TrueLeave has agreed to pay a reduced fine for 1 violation, which is failing to conduct a hazard analysis, and they're paying $14,502. So that is now the price set for a human life at a cannabis facility, at least on the East Coast over in Massachusetts. And another very disheartening thing about this settlement is that TrueLeave is now allowed to conduct their own internal study about ground cannabis dust, the dangers of ground cannabis dust. And with this study, they'll be able to just determine whether or not cannabis dust needs to be classified as a hazardous chemical in the occupational setting. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but as far as internal studies are concerned, I don't really know if that's going to work out the way.
Was that ever a question? It was because it was a particulate, because it was a physical dust. It was not the fact.
But I mean, that's setting the whole study up for failure, though. Why is TrueLeave going to say yes? I think all of our facilities should now have to require hazardous material, handling.
We should be spending more
at a huge expense. That seems like that's an inappropriate arbiter of that determination.
Right. Yeah, it's like grading your own paper. Like, give me a break. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Especially,
I still failed that test.
Yeah.
Right. And it's definitely been covered a lot more on the East Coast. I mean, this case in particular has been brought to light to the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission, MCCC. They had decided to do, I believe it was impromptu, a hearing about worker safety just as recently as last week. And Jamie, thank you so much for sending over the link of the Young Jerks podcast episode where they had brought on an organizer from the UFCW and also had played a portion of this meeting where the MCCC acknowledged that there was some very big safety problems in the cannabis industry. There was also the question asked, what about the 50,000 registered agents, AKA workers, in the state of Massachusetts? Like, can they call these worker safety numbers and get an actual human being when things are going awry, when there is a legitimate emergency in these places. So these questions are finally being acknowledged, at least in the places that we need them to. Hopefully it would be nice if the CRA would like to sit down and have these conversations as well. There's Massachusetts, I think they're going to be, unfortunately, it took somebody dying to be able to have this conversation. But it seems like they might be taking things seriously and might be leading by example, hopefully, giving Michigan and other states, which will have issues, like these things will happen here if things aren't, proactively addressed. We will see these issues here. So hopefully the MCCC will kind of create some ground for where we can start integrating worker safety in a realistic manner in cannabis facilities.
I have a
Go ahead, Anton. No.
I was going to say, getting, like you said, CRA, getting them involved, do they have purview over worker safety, or is it an OSHA? I mean, OSHA would be OSHA, right? But I mean, is there, from a regulatory standpoint, does CRA have any authority over that? I don't know how that works.
At the moment, they don't, via the email exchanges that I've had. However, they did say that if there are specific concerns that need, more immediate addressing, maybe there is a change of policy in order to do so, which is good that is being acknowledged, because at this moment in time, the CRA is just like, well, you can, for discrimination and harassment, you can, hit up the Civil Rights Department, and for health and safety, you can hit up OSHA. Other than that, it seems like there's nothing. But a lot of people that are working in these facilities aren't really aware of what their rights are and where they can go in order to file a complaint, and what is justifiable. As far as a hazard in the health and safety, in facilities. So again, this is education too about just basic rights.
Well, if we need to go to building codes for anything, I think we know a guy there.
So. Nice throwback. Yeah, Mr. Brisboe. I'm very curious how that is going to work out.
They do compartmentalize things in state government as far as who's responsible for what. Have we ever had any other cases in the United States of particulate cannabis matter causing illness or death?
Yes and no. Not that I can't name anything offhand. However, there have been a couple studies done, and it's no shocker, and it's not new news that growing cannabis in an industrial environment is going to produce hazardous issues for workers there. Doing anything indoors can cause problems, and especially if you don't have the right equipment, because let's say you just don't know what you're doing. All you've grown is 100 plants, and all of a sudden you just got this job where you're required to build out a room, and you have all these things that you really don't know how to use. That there are problems, and there has been deaths related to, and it's not cannabis. Now we have to really think about the language that we use when we're talking about health and safety and cannabis in the licensed realm, because it's not cannabis that is unsafe. It is the environment created,
correct,
that it is placed into that can become unsafe under the guise of humans that don't necessarily know what they're doing. And that could be the illegal use of pesticides, which we know is happening. There are some studies done. There are specifically with Michigan State University. They release this pesticide complaint study every year. And in 2021, there were several complaints that had to do with illegal herbicides that were being used in cannabis facilities. So when they say ground cannabis dust kills someone, that isn't the plant. That could be the things used on the plant.
Bad process,
or just the fact that it's like a physical solid matter that that compromised somebody's system, which happens in other places where particulate matter is created.
Isn't that isn't that the claim of this cannabis hyperkinesis nonsense, that it's like neem oil or something, that it's
No, it's not.
That's one of the theories that it might be, but
Right.
it's not really. And it's a thing. It's not that they don't know everything about it, except for there is something there. I mean, it's not like it's just a hoax or something like that.
No.
I mean,
no, but the
Different
things
bodies
they talk,
process differently. Right. It's not a bad mark on the cannabis plant itself. It's just different bodies process differently.
correct.
Exactly. So to wrap up with the TrueLeave investigation and what is going on with that. So pending the outcome of TrueLeave's study, they'll design and implement a temporary information and training program that would alert employees about potential allergic reactions that they might encounter on the job with ground cannabis dust in an
A
occupation.
poster on the wall, a poster that says, please don't do this.
Well, there's supposed to be a lot of posters that are set up in places or
Right.
supposed to be set up in facilities that you don't see to begin with. So
And
we need to start
and
somewhere.
the state should be investigating those people for that. That's when, see, now that's why my OSHA is so important, because they respond to that. I guarantee you, if my OSHA got a bunch of phone call from the employees that I've heard telling the stories that I've heard, hearing that, no, that poster has never been posted in a place I could see it,
Right.
for me to read those rules, they'd start investigating these companies. And it's really just it's really just naivete. A lot of these companies don't know they're supposed to inform their employees. A lot of them know they are and know better than to do it, because they're taking full advantage of these people.
right.
Well, there's supposed to be sorry, Jamie, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that Paul Linda joined us, and then go ahead and finish. I had a question for you too, but go ahead and respond to Adam.
I forgot, I lost it. So anyway,
I'm
you first.
Sorry.
The enforcement divisions of some of these agencies really don't have enough people to go around and do things like make sure posters are on the walls. When you're doing an inspection and you discover one, then you write a citation. But to actually go out and actively look for that seems like they're so understaffed to do that. But it is a basic tenet of worker safety, is that they know their rights, and we believe as a society that they should be clearly displayed and known. And it is sort of to an employer's detriment that their employees know what their rights are. So there isn't really much incentive for an employer to put that up on the wall, other than getting a fine from the state.
Right.
So Spartan saying that the neem oil is being responsible has been debunked. So that's actually new information for me. So I appreciate that.
Who knows what causes it? But
Yeah, it's still unknown, but that was a theory for a little bit. Apparently,
right.
I don't know exactly what it's based on, but I know he's interested in that stuff, and I assume he got some good information. So
Dr. Crocker was on our show just last week, I believe, or the week before, and talked about emesis syndrome.
he did, yeah. That was a cool one. That people should watch that. He said a lot of cool stuff in that.
He's such a laid back guy.
So, Stacy, do we know what changes, if any, particularly in the area of making sure there wasn't a bunch of dust in the room, that the company has actually made?
No, we really don't. I mean, well, we do from the workers' perspective. So workers that are either still working at the facility or had worked at the facility after she had passed away up until a recent point said that nothing had changed. The UFCW has been continuously trying with or working with the employees to try to unionize, and no, they haven't really employed anything different. They claim that they have made changes, but they also were the only ones to claim and try to blame Lorna's death on her by saying that she had a pre-existing condition, which they were the only ones that said that, and that has been proven to be untrue. So no, nothing has really changed. Apparently this study that they're allowed to do, this research that they're allowed to do has already started. So pending what happens with that, there might be some training and stuff added to their repertoire, if any. But
Paul, maybe Paul duck for a second. I wanted to. Oh, there you are. Hey, man. So part of the story we're talking about that unfortunate death in Massachusetts that took place at a cannabis facility, And what is known, the woman was in a room and there was a lot of dust, particulate. It was from cannabis, and I guess there was some information that she was asthmatic, or or something like so I don't know if that was just kind of like placed in there to make it as you suggested, to make it seem as though it was kind of like her predisposition or whatever on that. But anyway, so as part of the the discussion, we're talking about the weirdness of the company being able to do its own investigation or or whatever into this. But instead of like looking at it from having particulate matter in the air and like what that might do and what it could have done and that kind of stuff, would you explain what the actual research has to do with viewing it as a chemical, or there was something more specific that seems to not be necessarily totally reflective of what happened there, as I remember.
Was that question for me?
Yeah, just so you can read
sorry.
exactly what the research is. And remember, I'm just reminding him too what the situation was. I mean, the person's working in a room where there's not great ventilation and it's a lot of dry cannabis and this, particulates in the air. That's what we know, I guess.
Yeah, so like I said, there was I believe it was a Washington State is doing a cannabis, or has done a cannabis dust study. But I can't really tell you what it is, as far as they just keep calling it cannabis dust, and it is some kind of particulate. I don't have any specific details other than that, but the next time I'm on, I will have adequate answer for you on that one.
But I think a lot of us look at it like it's implying that it's just like this solid matter that causes problems, and it's the fact that it's cannabis is insignificant than if it were other type of dust or.
Right.
The woodworking industry has a solution for this. You'll see almost at every workstation there are big vacuums, and they suck up every little bit of sawdust because of that exact same reason. Oftentimes, people in that industry will wear respirators simply because they don't want to get any of that inside. But that's a solvable problem.
Simple solvable.
I mean,
that's HVAC is pretty basic, man.
So that's what we're viewing this as being the basis of the issue. I mean, I'm putting that into perspective. So when she describes what the study is, then that's kind of what the question is based around.
And that's Ricky hit on the head. Woodworking is one of the premier industries that deals with particulate matter in terms of its machines directly evacuating that substance out of the room. The other one is textiles, and then the other one is paper. So paper has one of the high particulate matters. Next time you open a package of toilet paper, take notice of all the white dust that flies around from the paper being cut. It's the equivalent of sawdust. Right. So there are measures in there. And then the way that I hear this story being told is that, which would be true across the board, regardless of what the particulate matter is you have a lady in an environment that either has some kind of predispositions, and she's in an environment that may or may not be properly ventilated, and there is a particulate matter that exceeds certain ppm over it. That's, again, regardless of the type of matter, the particulate matter, there is let's say a behavioral standard that is to be employed in situations where there is a particulate matter. And now the question I have is would that be universal, right? So for instance, if I cut a board in Ohio or I cut a board in China, sawdust is the same, right? Is my production method, or even my internal methodology of handling the cannabis, is that universal or is that particular? And that is to say, did
universal building codes, though? I mean, the universal building codes cover pretty much all states, I think, don't they?
Right, but I'm talking about the processing for the marijuana. So is something in the way that company A is processing marijuana that company B is not, where company A is producing more particulate matter or dangerous particulate matter for that regard? So that's
that would seem to make sense. That's because that's what it seems like the issue is, just based on from the original description of the story and all that kind of stuff. It seems like the way that they want to look at this might be skewing this real issue, and I just wanted her to repeat it so that you can hear what they're saying. And now that you just kind of know exactly what we all believe the situation to be.
You know, and I have to believe that that's a solvable problem too, because I know there are ppm meters out there. There are laser-based ppms that can detect how many particulates are in the air, not just on the roof, not just on the floor, but even right at the eye level workspace. So that's, again, these are all solvable problems. It seems like industry is just always so slow to have to spend money on worker safety.
Well,
Well,
and is
you
this
know,
the next goal in progress in terms of, again, worker safety, but also sort of an industry standard of bringing us into the rest of the world, right? If we have particulate matter, just as textiles and carpentry does, then what makes us different if we expect to be another commodity?
Right.
Right. And that, you know, needs to be recognized. And it does suck that it is, you know, gotten to this point for people to recognize that it's an issue and that respirators are necessary. You know, a piddly old N95 mask is not going to protect when you're working around. I mean, I've worked in a licensed grow before, and to go back to MIOSHA and filing a complaint with OSHA, there are particular things that qualifications that you have to meet in order for your complaint to be, I guess, considered. So when I worked at a licensed grow here in Detroit, I had made a complaint to OSHA, MIOSHA, after I had left about the environment there, and received a letter back saying because I was not a current employee, my complaint was kind of null and void. So I think that is right. I didn't realize that was a thing either, but that's a big deal. You know, if you're facing something immediately, you know, not a lot of people know that they can contact MIOSHA. And, you know, there's a lot of fear that is surrounding that too when contacting a government body, you know, in your place of work. So, you know, taking those things seriously. Oh, Rick, you're on mute.
Muted.
All right. So once you left employment, really your only recourse is through the courts. Then you have to actually sue them for you know, a hostile work or for a bad work environment of some kind.
There's
mean,
complaints
Which
go through
mo-
Department of Labor. So Department of Labor has to do with work practices and things like that. That's general. And I believe you can also do whistleblower lawsuits, wrongful termination, and things like that through some of those principles. But if you call them out and say, "Hey, look, these are this is their work practice," so OSHA is typically like, "Hey, here's a guy on a ladder, on a forklift, on a folding chair," right? Like that kind of dangerous dumbass stuff. Whereas like Department of Labor will get into the governance of the surroundings. And OSHA will cut you tickets. Department of Labor will cut your throat.
Right.
And there's a big difference.
And those are the issues that people seem to complain about, the wrong issue when it comes time to go to the government entity. I understand that this happened to you, but did these things happen to you? Because these are the things that we can make something happen with. There's other shit that you allowed to happen without paying attention, you know. And one of the biggest problems we have, in my opinion, is we're not able to collect evidence the way normally in some jobs you may be able to collect evidence against your boss for treating you the way you did or talking to you the way you did or whatever, because you're not allowed to have your phone. You're not allowed to take pictures where you're at. You're not allowed to do all kinds of things. And it really prevents a lot of just simple bad behavior that needs to be gotten rid of. I mean, when I say simple,
You know, we did a special show with Stacy and the Sugar Law Firm and discussed ways that what you do in those situations if two or more people find there to be an issue and stuff like that. You know what though? I wonder, Stace, could you read the study that they're going to do there based on, you know, what we described as the initial situation? I just wanted to have that comparison for Paul.
The True Leave study?
Yeah.
Yep. So they said they will perform a study to determine whether ground cannabis dust needs to be classified as a hazardous chemical in the occupational setting. Work on the study will be completed by May 29th, according to True Leave. So pending the outcome of the study, True Leave will design and implement a temporary information and training program that alerts employees to potential allergic reactions they might experience working with ground cannabis dust in an occupational setting.
Hey, Truly, who the fuck do you think you are? Why do we care?
And
Yeah.
this only applies to True Leave in Massachusetts, correct?
This one specific location, as far as I'm aware, yes.
Right.
So the people that are working there are now part of the study, I guess.
Well, and that is
Compensated.
Right?
it's a legal concept called subsequent remedial measures, right? Which is to say, I'm going to take control of this after the fact and bring myself into compliance and do all of my internal investigations and all this, become aware of what my problems are, right? I'm going to go to rehab and meet Jesus type of thing for the company. And they do so in a way, even though, like, if liability is there, liability does, you can't admit subsequent remedial measures to say I fixed it after I fucked it up. But that sounds like what they're doing. If they fucked it up and they're gonna have to eat shit because of some plaintiff that was a very delicate person who went there and unfortunately you had you captured lightning in a bottle and someone passed away. The likelihood of that being, let's say, constantly repeated in similar workplaces is probably very low, but it is the example that we all now are stuck to and now have to be aware of, right? It's like in automotive, the first time somebody lost their arm at a car factory, every other car factory is like, well, gotta watch out for that shit.
Right.
And that's unfortunately how progress in the labor safety or workplace safety environment really takes place. Because really, other than the known pitfalls of indoor gardening that we would have from the other horticultural worlds,
They don't know.
Right. Particular matter. I mean, is the lavender industry dealing with particular matter after they grind it and things like that?
Right.
We're guinea pigs.
Right.
Very true. We need very cannabis specific rules and cannabis specific studies. This isn't a pine tree. This isn't a rose bush. This is a plant that people have generally been told to avoid, their entire lives. And sometimes when you accept a job and you decide to enter into the cannabis industry, that might be your first time being around a plant, being around that plant, being around that many plants. That's a big deal. So, education.
The unfortunate part is that we have to, just like every other industry and every other process of learning and growing, is if the accusation is, hey, cannabis particulate matter can kill you. And we're like, sounds like bullshit, but we got to check it out. Right. So now we do the test to figure out what the real dangers of cannabis particulate matter are, and we respond accordingly. So hopefully through that exploration, right, that ideally scientific research, you'll find an answer that says, okay, this is too much, this is good, this is safe, and here's how we work with it moving forward. Because we have to learn and adjust by doing, and unfortunately, there's going to be problems that we couldn't have predicted because we're new. And the best thing to do, just kind of sounds like what True Leave is doing, is kind of saying, hey, it's not a problem, we're going to check it out. Don't let this be the reason why cannabis failed.
Right.
So we need to have those like moments of self-preservation, and we need to be able to, if someone says, hey, I died because of cannabis, right? You got to go through that and either find out if it's true or expose it as bullshit, because we're getting into the problem of is cannabis the next egg industry, where it's like eggs are bad, no, eggs are good, no, eggs are bad, no, eggs are good, right? And we cycle through that based on whatever the most recent news story has been. So it's really incumbent upon the cannabis industry to take charge of those issues and say, we hear you, we'll address it, we'll look into it, and we don't think it's going to be exactly as problematic as you think it is. It's not full of fear.
But at the end of the day, it would behoove, these cannabis business owners to readily oversupply PPE for workers, right? Instead, we're seeing an undersupply. We're not seeing the right things given. We could prevent a lot of these problems by providing respirators. Like I said, I've talked to workers around the country for the past 3 years, and the number one is respiratory issues. Number one.
And again, Stacy, just so everybody knows, that's not necessarily all cannabis businesses. You're concerned with like worker safety and this.
This is all cannabis that I'm actually talking
okay. Then you are talking. Okay, just wanted
so
to
I specifically only dealt with cannabis workers when I was interning with the UFCW. I was with the hemp and cannabis division. So all of my personal data comes from cannabis workers specifically, and that is the number one concern and the number one issue. Now, to go back to Lorna McMurray. To add another piece of information to this case, in November of 2021, she was rushed out of that facility in an ambulance and collapsed at work for the first time. The second time that happened, 4 days later, she died. So this was an ongoing thing. And she had posted on Facebook, I've never had these issues before. I'm afraid for my life. And here we are. So these things were being called out. I think it would be a wise choice for some of these cannabis businesses that are maybe looking at this issue and saying, maybe we're not doing enough. If you're thinking that you're not doing enough, you're not doing enough. Workers, I know that, they're not making a lot of money. But if your place of work is not providing respirators or proper PPE, it would be a good idea to invest in something for yourself.
Well, and not only providing the PPE, but not many people know this, but I was actually a firefighter for a period of time way back in the day, right? And when we talk about respirators, like fit testing the respirators, you can give anybody a respirator and say put it on, but if that shit ain't fit tested properly, which means now you gotta invest in somebody who's certified to fit test, and now you got to pull workers off the floor because there's a process that you have to go through. And if the employee, they can't have a beard, there's like certain protocols in order, because if the employee didn't shave their beard properly and they didn't get a sealed fit, is there liability on the company because they didn't train them properly, or is it the employee's fault? There's like nuances that even go into it, goes a step further than actually providing the PPE, but providing the education to make sure that it's being used safely is a whole nother ball of wax.
Well, it's a lot of costs that were cut of the initial startup for a lot of these cannabis businesses just by that little tidbit alone. You take all of these things that are not invested in the labor portion of the industry. And Jamie, again, to go back to the Young Jerks episode that you had sent over, there is a group of employees at a cannabis company called Verano that had voted union yes very recently. And Verano is saying that they do not want to, or I'm sorry, they haven't voted union yes, but they decided that they wanted to unionize, and Verano is refusing to recognize them. So what happens at this point is that now this group of people has to prepare for union busting. And what they are fighting for is exactly what we're talking about. There are people getting sick in their facility, having breathing problems. They're not being provided with PPE. They're not being provided with training. A lot of these things have been brought up to the employer, and they are not taking anybody seriously. They're firing people that speak up. It's the same kind of playbook that we're seeing over and over again. Which is why it has been an uphill battle for unionization in cannabis, because they're trying to nip this in the bud before it even gets as far as a union vote, which is a big deal.
Well, Stacey, do you think that the let's say the result of some of this information, right, this particulate matter information or any of this stuff, do you think that would help the issue of employment to say, look, we do need more protections because this is a real thing, or it wasn't a real thing, so we don't need as many, don't need as much oversight in terms of, again, we're not going in there wearing scuba masks or anything like that. It's not as bad as we think. Do you think that information, once it comes out, will change some of these relationships, or do you think it's the union path is its own thing, and regardless of what happens, we're going to continue on with these battles?
Well, I'd hope that it would change the conversation and change the dynamic a bit, right? going back to just the history of unionization, I mean, this is the reason that we have a 5-day work week. This is the reason that we're working 40 hours a week. This is the reason that, we have weekends and we have holidays and we have paid holidays and sick time and vacation time. That is because of unions. And, I think that unionization can be not necessarily beneficial in certain areas and it could be in others, but in this industry right now, I would hope that businesses would start self-policing better and trying to put in more effort than they actually are, but they're not. We're giving them the opportunity to do that and they're not. So unionization, at least in a portion of the industry, I think is one of the only ways that we're really going to see a change in, health and safety regulations. And hopefully, the animosity against unions will lighten up a bit when we see the kind of things that unions will be able to implement for us. We can see a little bit more of that in California because it's more of a mature market. They've had a union going there for a while now. They also have labor peace agreements. And, they've worked on legislation that is, more prone to better health and safety measures. So I think it's kind of this trickle effect where hopefully we'll see that conversation move that way here in Michigan and elsewhere too, but at the end of the day, if you set up shop in some small place in Michigan and, a lot of the people that started to work at your facility have left because we know the turnover is very high for several different reasons. You're burning through the talent pool, not just by low wages and lack of that promise of a career, but also people are legitimately getting sick. And if you're in Cadillac, Michigan, I mean, you're going to run out of people that are going to be able to work for you. So, these conversations really need to happen more often about health and safety and how we can make this a thriving industry and not have animosity when trying to solve these basic issues,
I can't bring something. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I can't even imagine when it gets to the point to where we're in a place to where, there is no more union busting and whatnot, but now we got to bargain with these people. Has that even become like, these are people that are not willing to even provide the employee with a mask, right? So what is that process going to look like, and how does that mature and evolve to the point to where that's its own dance, right? So how does it progress once we have the unions in place, and is it just going to be a strike all the time because they don't know how to bargain, so the employees are just going to walk out? Like, how does that whole thing mature?
You know what? I think Stacy identified it. Is let's take Cadillac as an example. Cadillac has a limited amount of labor, a very finite amount of people that will work there. Once you have burned through all of that, you have no labor force left. You have no labor. You have no business. So it turns the power back to the unions to say, look, if you want to work in this town, if you want to have a business in the town, you need our labor, and our labor exists this way, and these are the terms. Which, as you get into larger cities, and as we've seen through the line breakers and what they would call scabs, you can do that. You can have scabs in big towns because there's plenty of labor. You can translate the labor force, into your sector. So in smaller towns, it actually is a better, more likelihood for empowerment of the worker because they can be readily identified and compartmentalized to create that that union power and that swing to their advantage. And now, not every town is going to have that, and not every company is going to put themselves in that position, but that's how it starts.
Spartan Grown says right to work is probably the biggest issue for union participation. Very true. This Democratic legislature, the House and Senate, and the governorship, all being Democrats, have already talked about moving quickly on trying to eliminate right to work. It's been in place 10 years. Proponents say that it helps to attract business here because they don't always have to abide by as many union issues as they normally would. However, employment advocates certainly argue that these free riders, they get to take the benefit of union wages without having to pay union dues, actually do hurt unions.
It absolutely does. And it takes the power away from the worker too. there's hopefully we see the demise of right to work in this this session here, honestly. But to answer your question from earlier, though, Anton, as well, or to build upon what Paul said, there are several groups and campaigns that have reached the point of where they're at bargaining right now with some big MSOs. Unfortunately, the law is not written in perfect favor of the worker, where when you get to bargaining, the company can drag that out for a very long time. And that is the unfortunate reality. I'm talking 10 years. It could honestly go that long. We have seen some smaller places, more independent, not non-MSO dispensaries, recognize the union and work with the union and jump straight to bargaining and settle on a contract. As far as the larger unions are concerned, there are some contracts out there, but other times there aren't. I think it might be Curaleaf. They were recently cited for not bargaining fairly. The staff voted union yes, unanimously, went to bargaining, and they're just not showing up. They're playing these stupid games. They're kind of doing what Trader Joe's is doing to some of their employees and stuff now that are trying to unionize, where they're just literally not showing up the day that they're supposed to be meeting with the other side. And, this can go on for God knows how long. So that's when, the union really needs to start putting on pressure, when you need a strong union and a strong union presence. But over the years, as we know, union participation has gone down, union propaganda has gone up. That combating that is definitely a feat in and of itself. So, this isn't to discourage unionizing, though, because sometimes just I guess we can call it the threat of unionizing, where you and your coworkers get together and you sign union cards and stuff, will, kind of scare that employer enough to be like, whoa, hey, okay, you guys want some extra days off, or, whatever it might be. Let's sit down and talk. We can do this together, type deal. And you know what? That can work sometimes. It can. And if you're in a position where you're working somewhere and you don't want to get involved with the union for whatever reason, and you want to go about it yourself, make sure you get something in writing and your employer will sign something, that you both sign something, that these things are going to go into a contract. Because that's what a union will get you, is these things that you want in a contract. If it's not in a contract, then they're just blowing smoke.
A typical company policy is a one-way street. It could be
Right.
There's no authority that enforces it for the worker. It could be changed at any time. What's going on in the Loom in I think it was Monroe, where there was the beginning of a organization?
Yeah, so I honestly am not sure what has gone on since the holidays. I haven't followed up with anybody over there. They voted union yes, and they are pursuing bargaining at this point. I'm not sure how it's going, though. So thanks for the reminder on that one. If anybody from Loom is watching, please drop something in the comments, because I'm very curious to see how bargaining with them is going as well. There are some other places throughout Michigan that are in a position of bargaining as well, that I'd rather not name right now, for the sake of the workers kind of going through the situation in hopes of reaching, a contract sooner than later. But, more places I've noticed in the northern part of the state, and then down over here, we're not seeing a lot of positive activity of people latching on in the middle, exploring unionization. So,
Sorry.
but Loom is
Not
still
so much here or here.
But
but Loom is still actively laying people off as well, and also actively opening stores. So there's still this weird influx of gaining licenses in some areas and closing up shop in other areas.
I think more cultivation places are closing down and some more stores are opening up, or stores continue to open up, I guess. You know what? I know that we'll get right back to this, but I know that Anton isn't able to stay the whole time, and he has an announcement of sorts, kind of a regrouping in veteran efforts
Yes,
so to
yes,
speak.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had put out yesterday. Well, actually, I put out today with Hero Project USA. I have decided to move on and kind of reorganize some of my efforts. So I basically put out a statement on Facebook, just saying, "Hey, me personally, I have no more dealings with Hero Project USA or the Cannabis Social Equity Foundation. I wish those folks well. They want to help veterans, and like I said in my comment, that there's no competition among when we're helping people. There's no such thing as competition. The more people that we have organizing efforts to help as many people as they can, that's a positive thing. For me, I'm still looking to light the world on fire. I got some plans. We'll be announcing some stuff hopefully here soon. I got some meetings next week. The outpouring of support and just resources, it's been amazing. And what I've been working on this, for the past couple of years with folks involved with those organizations, and what we're looking to do is we're going to go hopefully 60 days is our time frame to be off the ground, and in the meantime, I have some resources in place to help some veterans out while we're waiting for this to take off. So, I don't want veterans to be sitting around waiting. My initial goal was to get something off the ground and in the hands of veterans by the end of January. And we hit a couple snags, and that's progress. This is something that's new for the state, and, good things to come, onward and upward. And the support has just been absolutely heartwarming. The community has embraced me in so many different ways and from so many different facets and just all the different types of businesses. It's been amazing. So I'm kind of excited to continue the journey and see where this kind of goes. Because, I've always said I wanted to be that bridge between cannabis and veterans, and it's coming to fruition. So, I said, I wish those folks well, and they're, executing their mission to help veterans, and I'm going to continue my mission, and yeah, good things ahead, I hope.
Yeah, we'll stay updated on that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yep. 100%.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you. And with that being said, I got to pop smoke, got kids to pick up. So I hope you guys have a great show. And Stacy, Paul, Adam, Rick, Jamie, I love you guys like family, man. You're all, this whole community it really is a big old family. Maybe dysfunctional sometimes, but family, right?
Dude.
So
it wouldn't work if it wasn't dysfunctional.
Right. I mean, come
absolutely.
on. What family is not dysfunctional?
Yep. So y'all have a great show. I'll talk to everybody later. Peace.
Thanks, man.
Have a good one, Anton.
You too. Bye.
Yes.
I'm also going to bounce you guys.
Okay. Right.
So thank you so much for having me on. I'm gonna take off here too. Thank you for everything. Appreciate the conversation. Hopefully we can talk sooner than later. Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Appreciate it. We'll stay updated on this and talk to you soon.
Thanks.
See you, Stace.
Sounds good, guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring something up that kind of piggybacks on the particulate matter, and this is something that I was kind of came to me as the conversation was happening. Is I'm seeing more grumblings or hearing more grumblings about CO2 and how when you're getting the CO2 mix and the flower rooms and blah blah blah, I guess the question is are you getting CO2 poisoning or CO2 sickness that's not being identified as such? Because and the funny part about this is this came through in the city of Warren. The city of Warren has been pushing on their growers CO2 exchanges and even fresh air exchanges,
Right.
like just straight opening a window equivalent, right? And of course, you can't control an environment with an open window. But apparently one of the building directors had someone die as a result of CO2 exposure. And so that's a top of the list issue for them is CO2 detection and things like that. And having some back and forth and kind of digging into the issue is that might be one of the yet to be determined issues that, if you are in this contained environment, you're breathing this air for so long, it's a different oxygen rate, and whatever the science is going to be behind it. And as a result, you're getting, getting yourself sick. Is that something that, again, of course, there's remedies for that. It exists in any other situation where you have low oxygen levels. But is that one of those issues that is yet to be defined and is being confused for something else, right? So I think of like particulate matter for cannabis. It's like, well, having a bunch of smokers complain about respiratory problems, there's some pushback there.
Well,
but the fact that cannabis has been around for so long and has been ground up into oblivion in many forms in a setting, you never heard about this.
Right.
To me, there is one of those issues where we find out the truth by pursuing the wrong answer.
Well,
yeah. Well, this. Go ahead, Adam. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, Paul, if we could go talk to the Indian hash makers, I bet there's nobody alive that would tell us that you have to be too careful when you're standing near the guy that's, putting work in the sifter. Maybe so. And I've seen a lot of video, but I don't see them in respirators. But I would say, if I was working in one of these jobs, that I would hope that I was educated enough to know that I needed a respirator, whether I had to buy my own or not, that I needed to be in a Tyvek suit, whether I needed to buy my own or not. I am completely shocked, not surprised, but shocked that companies put their names and logos on things posted on the internet, on social media, that show human beings inside grows un-PPE'd, period. I mean, I don't care who the human being is. If he's that grows a show grow at that point,
It's a big basement.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, is that you would have to put them in all that stuff, and that doesn't make for a good photograph. And I get it, and I understand what's going on here. But if you're going to keep your grow clean and you want to do things right, it's 100%. It's not, you don't get 99%.
What I was thinking about that is we get a study that might say, dust from ground cannabis should not be considered to be a dangerous chemical. Ultimately from that True Leaf study, and we might go, okay, cool, yeah, it's another good thing to be able to say about this. But while they do that, they disregard the very basic issue that we all just assumed it was from hearing the description of what happened in there, and that we know is consistent with other industry, and and had to be careful to say, even though cannabis caused the particulate matter, it's just a matter of being a solid thing that gets in your respiratory system and causes problems for people, or whatever that discussion was. So.
Yeah. It's again, it's still we are learning our way through this, right? We have to go through it. We can't go around it. And my hope is that the learning curve is short and that the benefits are many, so that we don't have to keep doing, or should say, keep going through this all the time.
It's just a part of an evolving industry, right? I mean, that's part of the part of evolving industry is that we're making mistakes and learning from it.
Go ahead, Ed. I'm sorry.
I like to use the word infancy. This industry is in its infancy. So any of us that have children, you know what infants do.
Poop.
It's
eating poop. No, I mean, literally, because here's what I'm saying. My grandchildren are going to laugh about what their grandfather did.
Right.
They're going to laugh about it. Are you kidding? He dressed up like an idiot up and got in front of people and screamed and hollered to do what? Change a law? If we want a law and change now, we go to our computer. I mean, I'm talking, generations. But
And hopefully they're upset that it was over cannabis as well.
Well, yeah, and that's the other thing. I mean, I expect a lot of change, but at this point, I think, again, we have a lot to educate. We don't have a lot to learn. We may not know the facts, but we do know the outcome. We know what the outcome will be. Now give us half a chance to prove it right. You know? But I've always looked at this at the hypocrisy. That was my thing. There was hypocrisy here. I knew that I would always be on the right side.
Adam, your mic keeps cutting in and out. Yeah, but
Lucky me.
You know, it's like this seems to be also a result of how like less considerate to the labor force and those costs in a venture for investors, you know, and then coming into the cannabis where that wasn't really addressed, no standards set forth already, just you know, just those that come in from with resources from other industries just come in and run roughshod and do the turnover thing, and you know, just all the stuff that we hear the complaints about. And
well, and it strikes me too, just for on the transition from what, you know, I come from a union family. What was understood to be union back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and even the 90s, and what the concept of unions are now, right? The ideas are the same. It's the size, right? Because when you were a union because you were one of a million in the UAW, you worked in one of the, you know, you were one of bazillion auto workers in the whole state, and there was the be unionized because of the size. And I think the resistance is conceptually to the, oh, we're not a gigantic Ford factory, we don't need a union, and it's not the appropriate lens, right? The lens has to do with making things consistent and establishing a set of rules and expectations on both sides, but really, you know, fairness and protections. But people think of that in, oh, you must be multi-location, large enough, have interchangeable workforces that work 3 shifts around, and there's sort of, you know, almost like the idea that unions are for factories and nothing more.
Yeah, see, yeah. I would personally, if I had, and Rick, in my opinion, may understand this because he's worked for these type of companies. If I worked for a company that had my name in cities all across the state, and I had employees that represented me, I would have a set of rules that would be like union rules, and I would treat these people like they had their union, because I would want them to do more. I would want them to be safe. I would want them to want to work harder. I would want them to not want their fellow employee to take advantage of the system. And, you know, I think these companies, and, you know, automotive companies, we don't need unions because people are getting killed at work regularly, daily. I mean, you know, that was a rough time when unions started out. We need unions for other reasons now. And it's almost like we're calling them unions, but that's not what we need. They're doing the same. They're doing similar things, but people see them very differently. There's a lot of anti-union people out there. And the more I see this cannabis industry, I'll be honest, the more pro-union I get. I'm just shocked at the way some
the need to pay attention to labor stuff is definitely glaring, you know.
Well, I also think that sexual harassment issues in some of the environments I've talked to people, you know, we're talking about in the retail environment specifically. There should be some watchdog over that, and it certainly can't be the government. It has to be a union.
Well, right, and that's the problem, is that if it's not a union, the government is only going to do so much. Most people won't go to the government because these are anti-government people. I mean, and it's unfortunate because
And it's been in control. A lot of people with influences that don't want it to be easy,
but
you know,
Paul
labor
mentioned,
to.
Paul mentioned what's the labor organization you mentioned earlier? You mentioned there's MIOSHA and what?
Oh, Department of Labor?
Yeah, the Department of Labor. So the Department of Labor loves provable sexual harassment cases. They love them. They eat them up because it's a great way to spend their money and get more. And people should be protected. And they fight. They actually fight. I mean, it's if you got a case and you can go to the Department of Labor with a sexual harassment case, they love you. They'll take you right in. It's better than any lawyer you'll ever go see. No offense, Paul. But they eat that up, and people got to start doing something because it's bad. I mean, I talked to 3 women the other day who told me that they worked for a company where 20 people stood up and walked out. Literally, a new company walked in, took over, had a meeting, had brought everyone together, and just by the way they were being spoken to, these people walked out. How's that happen?
Unprofessional management. That's how that happens.
These are MSOs.
It doesn't matter. That's even worse.
I know. I mean, this is the MSO sending their guy in to say, all right, listen, here's the new rules. Here's how it's going to be. The name on the front door is being changed. And if you don't like it, you can leave. And none of your key cards work and nothing works anymore. Who's staying and who's going?
Yeah. But that's one of the things that happens with mergers and acquisitions. In order to save money, positions are slashed at you don't need 2 sets of accountants. You don't need 2 sets of attorneys.
Of course,
forces. But you also sometimes trim some of the benefits that the other company gave their staff, and you cut some of the important stuff to people like vacation time and benefits.
Right. And that's what they're doing. They're telling them, listen, I can hire somebody at $13 an hour. I don't have to pay them what I'm paying you. And I don't have to give them anything because they're happy.
It's pretty soon going to be close to minimum wage.
Yeah. I mean, well,
13, I think it's 13.50 or something.
I'm sorry.
I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's a jump.
I'm sorry to have to say this, but isn't your average bud tender at your average MSO really just a minimum wage worker?
I don't know. I think the average is around $15 an hour.
That was what I was saying.
But I didn't mean it by pay. I meant worker.
The quality of the worker?
Correct.
I don't know. I've seen some really intelligent people. I
think a lot of those people are working in the industry in order to say, you know what? I spent 2 years working in a grow. I spent 2 years working in a processor. I spent 2 years working in a dispensary. I've worked all these different pieces. Now put me in, now coach, it's either time to put me in or let me go find my own money. But I really think that a lot of these people that are involved don't get it. They have no idea. They're in it for the wrong reasons. They're not the people we're talking about. And the people we're talking about are being harmed by the fact that others aren't speaking up. Because they're not going to speak up.
Well, that's always the way. Sexual harassment in a workplace doesn't happen on just one person. And remember that even witnesses to sexual harassment can still file charges too. You don't have to actually be the victimized person. So when we're talking about that, there's clearly more than one person involved. But when you're talking about cultivation centers, typically there's, there may be more than one shift. So you have multiple people doing exactly the same job, which means they're at the exact same exposure level, it would seem. So, and Joe has a success story too. Bud tender entry level. It's where I started. Now I'm an owner. Joe's doing a great job recovering.
I used to go see Joe at Jazz in Bay City. I think we had become a manager there by that time.
No, he's doing a great job recovering from surgery and getting healthy. And congratulations to Joe for that.
Yeah.
So,
Put the posting in your place, Joe. Jump it up here.
Yeah.
I think that's very doable, but I don't believe there's a bud tender working in an MSO that will ever end up on its board or part of its corporate structure.
I think at that point, the requirements for those positions would be an advanced degree of some kind or some type of corresponding experience that I don't think you get from coming up. The days of starting from the bottom and ending up at the top, still the American dream, and people still realize it all the time, just like Joe. But it really isn't possible when you're talking about multi-state operators where headquarters is in Goshen, Indiana, or San Bernardino, California. And you're never going to be a kid from Flint, Michigan that rules a company out of Cali. That just doesn't seem like an achievable goal.
They're also never going to discover you and move you to Cali either.
Yeah, that's true.
That's part of it also. I mean, I've had jobs where they said, you know what, we like what you do. You're in Ferndale, go to Ypsilanti. Nobody's ever said come to sunny Florida, I mean, but it happens in this world on a rare occasion. It's not going to happen much in the weed game. These guys that are flying around in their jets in order to see their return on investment and why it's not coming in, they're never going to get it, and they're never going to understand what they did wrong in their investment, because based on what they were told, their investment should be paying off.
There's a lot of misfires on some of the estimates, and it seems like that's for sure. You know what? I think Joe's place, I'm assuming it's called Breaking Buds.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've seen it on Facebook.
Okay, Breaking Buds, and that's up north on the east side. What town is it in, Joe?
Bay City.
Oh, is that actually in Bay City?
City. Well,
Breaking Buds in Bay City. Go check it out.
If I'm ever in Bay City, I will break my rule and I will go in.
Oh, that's big, man. Take some pictures for when that happens for sure.
I would. Oh no! We leave with the videotape from. It's like a robbery, We record.
You got to erase the video too.
The state should have a copy, right? But I'll.
You got to give guys like Joe credit, because the guys that work their way up, right? The old American dream success story where I started in the mailroom and now I'm the CEO.
Right.
Not only does it display a knowledge of every level of your industry and every level of your job, to where if you had to do it yourself, you could. And as long as you understand every position in your company, then you know how to maximize that company, because you truly know how all the parts work and turn. The other aspect of that is when you are, let's call it the engineer and the builder of that machine, right? Which is your company. You understand it because you've been there, you've worked through all the stages of it. And the part that usually gets left behind is these people think they can now take the day off, or they can now not work, or they can replace employees and they can put someone there in their place and they can go off and do something else, which is when the business starts to decline, because those moments open up for theft. They open up for deviation from the way that customers are treated, certain practices. The inmates start to run the asylum. And by the time the owner is aware of this, because it takes a little bit for the to change, it's too late. Your reputation's gone. The Wookiees have changed your environment, and you lose something. So it doesn't surprise me that some guy sitting in some office, not growing pot in his basement in some different state, is having problems with a business that he doesn't see every day, that's running 1,000 miles away.
Right.
And there's no mystery to that. I mean, that the worst truth of that is in the bar industry, right? If you are not, you don't work behind the bar as a bar owner, you're giving away booze.
That's right.
You're getting every day.
Every successful bar I ever worked in, the bar owner sat at the end of the bar. I mean, he was an alcoholic most of the time, but either way, he was at the end of the bar. He
watched the overpours.
He was the cook in the kitchen. He ran. I mean, it's the successful. They were on site and paid attention. They might not have done the heavy lifting, Some guys did.
Yeah.
They enjoyed it. That's a whole different thing. But even the guys that just sat there, they were there and they paid attention.
And I tell you what, the way that this conversation kind of progresses is into, under the same reason, is you get into employee ownership, right? If you've ever seen like the way that it used to be when you had 4 guys going on a big grow and 4 guys were going to split it, and those 4 guys could trust each other and it all worked out. Those 4 guys were cracking whips on each other because you were affecting my profit.
Yeah.
And works all the way around because we're all vested and we're all going to keep our eye on each other. So that in the same way, if you had an employee-owned grow, you know, there's not going to be a lot of screwing around. If you have an employee-owned or an employee-vested retailer, I mean, they don't want, yes, you have to give away and you have to do customer service and all that stuff, but they're going to keep those margins tight. They're going to keep those numbers in their favor because they all benefit. They're not stealing from the man. They're not screwing over the boss. You are the boss. You are the man. Don't fuck yourself, right? That is going to be, you know, when we're all in it together, we will all succeed. And that's, it's kind of funny to think that like that principle is as old as the hills, and we still aren't seeing that by and large in cannabis.
Right.
Especially from where we come from. We come from deals with your bros in the basement, and that's how we all got here. I mean, most of those guys end up in court because they shit from shine when it comes to business. But the fact that it's more prevalent, maybe it is, we don't hear about it.
But this industry has a lot to learn about doing business. I mean, I grew up in retail, so I understand customer service. I understand retailing. You know, I learned from 80-year-old men that talk about a different time when things were very different. Nowadays, customer service means absolutely nothing. People will be treated poorly at one place and go back, and they don't take their dollars. And they certainly wouldn't think to tell the manager, you know what, I wasn't happy the last time I was here, but I did come back, or I'm not coming back. And these places, but again, this is America, and most of these places understand that, and that's okay, because there's enough people coming in the door, or at least there should be. And that's the, you know, that's a big question, is where are all the people? Well, sell better weed. They'll be there. At least that's what I hear. I don't know. I haven't been in those places, so I wouldn't know. But I have smoked some of their weed.
That's like the business. That's the best business advice ever. Just sell better weed.
Right. I want to do an ad for a dispensary. I want to be able to stand out in front and say, the weed at Joe's dispensary is so good, I actually bought weed here.
I was muted for a second, but I was confirming that I agree. That's ultimately kind of what it comes down to. Really good cannabis, you know, at a good price. What's best for the consumer typically is a good idea right now.
In a competitive market, you have to have better product, because fancy packaging doesn't get you a second purchase. It'll get you one, but it won't get you two.
No, but in this industry, we only need everybody to buy one, because they will come buy two somewhere else or something else. And we need to own enough so that wherever they're going, we're getting. And we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing these companies buying things up, and all of a sudden they're, you know, Truly, even Florida's got all the stores, you know. I mean, there's okay, so it doesn't matter what they do. They can do whatever they want. They control the market.
And that is like seriously like 80 of the 115 stores, or I don't know what the numbers are.
They have over 100. I believe they have over 100 stores in Florida now.
Yeah,
but
it's market dominance.
You control the market, and you don't have to say this is Truly, where in Massachusetts we didn't properly take care of somebody, and we're now required to provide PPE to all our employees. That's the type of shit that happens in lawsuits. And that's why you hear these things on TV. is because they get found guilty of something, and their punishment is that every time they say something publicly or go public or print a label or anything, they got to say, oops, we're sorry, we messed up. I'd love Bobby Platshorn to have to say sorry about the girl up in Massachusetts every time he's promoting Truly.
We're having to put that on their packaging or something.
Yeah. I mean,
May cause death in Massachusetts.
Listen, they make you put the poison number on in Michigan. So now
That's a weird one.
calls have gone up because people don't know what to do. And it says call the poison thing. So they call. And you know what the poison people tell them? Take your kid to the hospital if you're afraid. Now those numbers go up.
Yep.
You know, just somebody has made me aware of the fact that there's also kind of a mandate or an expectation to have some like pamphlets or some information like in the lobbies of the stores about the Poison Control Center and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
What are they going to do? Tell you to drink some water? Tell you to lay down? Like what is?
I just don't like the way the association is rough. I'm sure it made
Yeah.
somebody feel comfortable somewhere. That's why it got there. But
You're putting it up there with drinking bleach and
Right.
And we do see the poison control numbers, phone calls into the poison control are constantly being cited as a proof statement of how children are getting medibles or cannabis is being mishandled. But in reality, the only real true metric of that is emergency room and doctor's office visits. If those are not going up, then it doesn't matter about calls to an 800 number.
you know, they do the same thing with doctor visits as they did with like the driving study from the Rocky Mountain things. Whenever it's just around, they'll try to repackage it to make it seem like there's more of a causation and than it just being able to be mentioned in the same story or whatever. Similar to what they did in Colorado.
And I understand that, oops, we got a problem. Kids are getting hold of things, they doing stupid shit, stealing their parents' gummies, all that. But once again, where's the damage? Where's the harm? The kid freaked out for a day? Is that the harm and the damage that we're really still going through all this stuff for?
And I believe the parents more freaking out than the kid too in most instances, which is the kid's
like
tired. He's just tired and doesn't want to eat, and he just let me sleep, Mom.
Right. Like the cop that freaked out from Dearborn or wherever it was.
I remember that.
Yeah.
He quit harshing my mellow.
Called 911, said I'm a police officer and I took some medibles from a crime scene today and we ate
Dearborn.
them. We're gonna die.
Right. Me and my wife are gonna die. Dearborn. Right.
Did you also ask about the Red Wing score too?
To make sure that it was
oh my god.
As a baseline for reality.
I
I think we're dead. I really do.
Now, I'll be honest. To me, that's cannabis humor. Okay, I think stuff like that's hysterical.
That guy really thought he was going to die because of the anxiety and paranoia he was getting from cannabis.
Frankly, some of the muffins that are made in the unregulated marketplace, if you ate the whole thing, you might have an out-of-body experience at some point,
I ask people all the time, how many times have you said, I'm never going to smoke weed again?
Zero.
I've said I'm not having those cookies anymore.
I may have. I'm not positive, but
then you haven't
I didn't
gotten
mean it.
high enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have said I don't want to have medibles anymore. I have said that.
Medibles.
I tell you what,
get you.
The difference for me is when I woke up the next day, I'm just like, I'm still riding this brownie out. That was when I'm just like, I'm gonna dial it back a little bit.
Riding the brownie in the morning, Paul. Oh, that's great. Oh. Yeah, I mean, you like to think that some hours of sleep would clean your system. Not all the way. Not if you've been hyperdosed.
No,
you wake up on the moon.
Your liver can only process out so much per hour, and it doesn't matter. That's funny.
But
all right, I got to split, guys. I got to pick up my kids. I'll see you next week. I appreciate the time.
Thanks, Paul.
Always
Thanks a lot, man.
Attorney Paul Talend, everyone. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
See you, man.
One of the good guys.
He sure is. Adam, how are you feeling? Because you're
I feel horrible.
Yeah.
But I'm doing great. I had a really, really unique experience at Disney, and I had a really good time. And yeah, it was a real adventure. And I took capsules at Disney, and I used a motorized wheelchair, and they load you in the rides through the exit. So you have to go up these channels, these back and forth, and I'm stoned off my ass trying to go straight and turn, but I did all right. I had a good time. It was fun. I would I was doing 100 milligram capsules, and I limited it to 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon.
That's way
a lot.
more than I could handle.
Yeah.
Oh, I couldn't handle it. I had some real problems, but that's what I did.
Crashed into a doorway somewhere?
Well, I misjudged the doorway actually with the wheelchair, and I my knee smashed the door, and I posted this bloody picture. But that wasn't the real issue. The real issue was I was trying to get off of one of the buses, and they have a ramp that folds down, and I'm using a power chair. And you know, every power wheelchair comes with a seatbelt. Not that I would ever use it. And as I was coming down the ramp, one of the wheels got caught, and it grabbed the chair and it stopped it. And I literally went flying about 3 feet off the chair onto the sidewalk, hit the ground, and everybody except Mickey, Minnie, Goofy, Donald, and Pluto showed up. The fire department, the Disney people in suits, people with things in their ear, people talking in their wrists. I mean, the whole world showed up. But the coolest part is there is no Mickey Mouse fire department, which I think would be funny if you actually had a Mickey Mouse fire department. It's I want to say Reedy City, but it's not city. Shit, I'm high. Anyways, Disney formed a bunch of fake companies in order to buy up all this land, and people thought that there were a bunch of companies that were going to bid against each other, which he used these fake companies. So the fire department is named after one of the fake companies, Reedy City or Reedy Creek. That's what it is. Reedy Creek is the name of. There is no Reedy Creek. There is no location on a map called Reedy Creek, but it's the Reedy Creek Fire Department. And they were really cool, and they gave my kids some Beanie Babies that have Dalmatians. The fire department gave my kids these Dalmatian Beanie Babies that say RCFD on it. And I even asked my kid, I said, Dad got hurt, and that was pretty embarrassing, at least for Dad. But was it worth it? He was like, yeah, that was pretty cool. He was really psyched about it. So, I beat the hell out of myself at Disney, but, the kids had fun.
That's what it's about, right? I mean,
right. And then I got to see my mom. I'm excited about that, right?
Nice trip. Yeah.
You don't typically broadcast from the dark, so it seems as if you were not feeling normally.
No, I actually came in the room when it was a little lighter out, and to get up and flip the switch is a pain in the ass at the moment.
You're kind of mysterious, like
yeah. I'm in the look. Actually, I'm
the
wearing
guru in a cave. Yes, you come to seek advice from.
I'm wearing my Elvis Hunka Hunka Bernie Love jumpsuit hoodie that I own. I don't know if you're into Elvis, but
perhaps it's better that you're in the dark then.
Right. If you're into Elvis, this is the one he wore.
Nice.
The one. Okay.
Well, not the one, but the design of.
I mean, there was a time in Elvis's life where he could have produced that kind of size garment. Yeah.
Oh, dude. Yeah, this was. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to see.
But I'm doing all right. I'm hanging in there. I get out a little bit. I went to an industry event. I won't admit that anywhere but here.
I was there.
I was there too.
I went to an industry event, and people saw me there. And I'm thinking about throwing an industry event, like an invitational type industry event. I'm thinking mom and pop type stuff, smaller. But, things are good.
At that industry event, Al Harrington of Viola Brands showed up, which was wonderful. He's got a big operation in Detroit. And I happened to snap a picture of Al Harrington talking to Adam Brook. And I haven't sent that to him yet, but I will.
Well, yeah, I need that.
Yeah,
McCarty was there.
McCarty was there.
D-Mac.
Which, yeah.
A lot of good
There were a
companies. They
lot
got
of
some good
people there.
samples, man. I mean,
They did. They had good samples.
I got some good samples from there. Yes, for sure.
Those seemed like younger people too. Those didn't seem like big money operators.
There were a couple bigger companies, but it was a lot of like the MICA typical participant kind of, so to speak, was there.
The thrust of the event was to try and connect suppliers with purchasers so that they could, more facilitate making transactions. But there were a lot of us there, like myself and Adam, that don't really have anything to do with a regulated cannabis company, but where there is industry, industry personalities. Just, I really enjoyed myself. The food was excellent. I thought the venue was surprisingly large when they put the tent out there. And I thought that the whole vibe was totally upbeat.
Was that your first time there, Rick?
It was. It was.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, that's my second time there. That's a new tent. They did real well at changing the tent. They had multiple tents before, which was a problem because it rained. So they did really well with the tent improvement. The food is always amazing at these events.
It was the best that it's been at this last one.
And I was I was a guest to Harry Barish, so I'm going to put that out there because I requested access, and he was kind enough to put me on the list. So.
Harry for being the mastermind behind that whole thing. I know you can't pull something like that off with just one single person, but he certainly is the face of that event, and I think all of us had a great time.
Yeah,
a lot of people wanted to participate in it. He found a good spot and set it up and did his thing. So he does deserve a lot of credit. That was the third one he did, I think.
Could be, yes.
Yeah.
I've been at all three of them and then one other event there in Hazel
the Hot
Park.
Box Social Lounge in Hazel Park.
And Glenn is going to do one in March 19th, I think. More details to come, but
that is good to know. No, I really enjoyed myself. It was nice to see Adam out at an industry event, kind of unusual.
I have a picture taken with him at the one before.
Yeah, we can't. That I look at that every once in a while, and I'm like, man, I can't let this get out because I was standing. Also, because I was standing in front of all the brands. That's the bigger problem.
And like High Life and some other undesirables around that.
All the background.
Some people wouldn't take a picture because of some of the brands that were there.
Right. Whatever. I was there. I've already got shit for going to that one. I haven't gotten shit yet for going to this one. They don't know. my shit givers haven't given me shit over it yet. But and listen, I'd go to big industry events if I could, and I'd walk around and I'd do what I do. But so far I haven't seen much here. Now Harry does a good job, so I like to go to his places. But
the MICA event in Detroit not too long ago was pretty nice.
I missed that. I mean, I thought about it. I wasn't, I was still healing up, and
it was first class accommodations. Food was great. Everyone was dressed to the nines. It was pretty great.
And lenient on a lot of people smoking pot right outside the doors.
We polluted that place. We did. Right outside at the limo entrance, essentially, is where we were at.
Yeah.
Right. We're inside of Greektown, right down the street, or not Greektown, but
was it MGM?
MGM.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So no, it was all the way around. And we've seen some certainly high class ones. And then there's some of the outdoor ones that have been pretty exceptional too. We're just really diverse in some of the stuff we're doing with golf tournaments, the music events that are happening, Spark in the Park, a similar event at Adato Park in Lansing as well. Now that Detroit has opened up, I expect that there will be more industry style events, outdoor type in the city of Detroit. Certainly a lot of space.
I'm involved in a project in Detroit where they're going to build entertainment space. It's going to have its own entertainment space. It'll have a dispensary near it. It'll have, a consumption lounge. But one of the focuses is that it'll have not only indoor but outdoor entertainment space.
Nice.
That's all coming. The rec law changed everything.
Mm-hmm.
As we knew it would.
Well, of course, having an outdoor space for consumption of cannabis is so much more advantageous. And in Detroit, there are some wonderful venues that are just not used. I attended a high tea event with Q and Quinn Jameson. Got to be middle of last year, middle of 2022. And it was in a place in Detroit I had never heard of. And it didn't look like anything from the front, but it opened up onto a wonderful masterpiece of warehouse turned into a useful space, and opened up on this private kind of gated alley where we were all able to consume cannabis. And it was wonderful.
Things are changing, and I talk to people all the time. I mean, I can take just about any room and get the odor out. Matter of no time.
Good.
And those type of things are coming where you have your consumption lounge, you have your event license, your consumption lounge. You want to come do it at a venue that normally you would never think would allow it. Well, it's going to cost you, but you can get it done.
I watched the awards that were just at the Detroit Opera House, I believe. And they were openly smoking Trick, and others were openly smoking on stage. So clearly, they were not afraid to light up.
Well, one thing I will say is smoking on stage is considered part of the performance.
Mm-hmm.
So we've always been able to get away with smoking on stage.
He was receiving an award. Speaking.
No,
I know. Just about time, James.
We are winding down. We had who's been on? Anton, of course, Stacy, Paul. We're all on today. It was much appreciated, and nice update on the labor stuff. Not the greatest news, but a little update on it nonetheless. It was an interesting conversation. I definitely appreciated that today. Adam, is there anything you want to make sure that you toss in there before we?
No, I'm more concerned about these people getting fired than I'm hearing about. But that's
laid off and fired, yeah.
People, in large groups that are just being, it's not something I've heard once or twice. It's something I've heard many times, and that really concerns me because some of these are the people that have built this industry, and if they turn against the industry, it's going to have a problem. So, but that's for another show. We should get into that.
We can do that.
Yeah.
And there's other stuff too. I think we kind of want to cover, but we have a whole new year to do it in. I think everybody's coming back on to support us, and looking forward to having these conversations and just keeping up our goal to get something worthwhile recorded every week. In spite of how much Rick tries to stop us from doing that. So anyway, I think we're ready to close it out. If you don't mind wrapping us up, Rick.
Well, just Yep, thank you. It was a good show. Tomorrow on 420 Post at 1:00, Ryan Baser will be our guest interviewee. So take a look at that. And then next week on 420 Post, it'll be CRA head Brian Hanna for the whole hour. So those are some things to keep an eye out for. I mean, this shows a great example. Just stay in touch. The dialogue's there. The issues are there. You can just smoke cannabis and never touch the news at all. But isn't it more fun? Don't you have more of a real understanding of the world around you when you tune into shows like this and stay abreast of what's happening, not just in Michigan, but across the United States? So I'm proud of the work that we do here, and I'm happy to do it with you, gentlemen. That's my message.
Right on. Appreciate it.
Cool.
So then we will do it again next week.
I hope so.
Looking forward to it. All right, you guys have a good night. Jazz Cabbage Cafe.
Take care.
Peace.
See you later.